Hello. Well, this is the second video I'm making about the wildfires in Greece and the climate change hysteria. Look, climate might be changing. There are so many figures around. I'm not going to say one way or the other for sure. There does, as far as I can make out, seem to be a trend upwards. Does that mean humans have anything to do with it? Possibly not, because we were going through a cool phase and now we're going up, and they always show the figures from the last 10 years or something instead of showing the whole cycle. So I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I am going to say that if there is warming, then we should be doing something about it. What should we be doing? Well, should we be doing this? Hang on, is that a bloke? I think it might be. Oh, it's difficult to know in these costumes, which is obviously what the whole idea is about. Anyway, do you do this? Or do you think of more constructive ideas? Well, singing is quite constructive, isn't it? Now, look, this is a really unpleasant, horrible situation, and not only are the wildfires destroying homes, but they're also doing terrible pollution to the air, which everyone should be worried about. The wildfires have so far raged uncontrolled through two towns near Athens. Greece is now bracing itself for another heat wave this week, with weather experts warning of a high risk of fire. And here, well, I had a video, but it came up on a page that had so many pop-ups I didn't, I shut it off. But you can see, this is awful. This is not something to be minimised. And then it says here, right down here, wildfires are common in summer, but they can still be deadly. Of course, a wildfire killed 101 people in the seaside town of Mati, east of Athens, in 2018. And then they show this. Now, it didn't used to be that they showed the entire continent on fire. 40 degrees is hot, but it's not unusual in southern Europe. 36 is hot, but it's still not unusual in Europe. And 22, I mean, just look at this here in Britain. 22, it's only hot if you're stuck inside a British house with the windows closed. Right. And then it says here, from Thursday, the second heat wave will be felt in most areas, with minimum temperatures reaching up to 43°C. We'll have to see about that. Okay, so there is a high risk of fire. Let's just have a look at some scholarly research on the matter. This academic paper, printed by Springer, or Springer if you come from southern Germany. Greece, to those who know it only from archaeological books and its ancient architecture, is associated with rocks and bare mountains. But all over the Greek territory, the climate, characterised by more or less long, dry and hot summers, is in general very favourable for the development of dense forest. No doubt in prehistoric times, Greece was totally covered with thick forests, with the only exception of the summits of high mountains rising above the timberline. So, in classical times, there were many, many forests in Greece. There aren't that many now. Do you think this might have something to do with Greece's present problems? The recently discovered bones found in excavations near Pikermi, a few kilometres east of Athens, belong to a prehistoric, large and very robust animal, the habitat of which is confined to extent forest environment. That gives a very, very strong evidence that Attica was covered in unbroken forests. And then Hercules killed an elk. And again, an elk is a forest animal. So the destruction of the Greek forest largely began with the invasion of the country by various Indo-German races. They started from around the Danube River and, using fire mainly, they converted large forested surfaces to grasslands in order to secure better feeding for their numerous livestock animals. Okay, so this problem started thousands of years ago. I'm not blaming the Greeks. They didn't know, they knew not what they were doing. But what has happened over the centuries is that more and more of the forested land has been denuded in order to make it suitable for grassland and planting and grapes or whatever. And of course, when the trees are gone, they're gone because the ground dries out. And a similar thing seemed to have happened in Sumer, where the people lived for a long time in one area. They kept irrigating their crops and at the same time washing salt into the ground, and then you could see how they were trying to deal with this, because they stopped growing wheat and started growing barley, which is more salt resistant. But as the ground got saltier and saltier, they finally ended up abandoning the place because there was too much salt to grow, even to grow barley enough to keep you alive. Human beings have been doing this for thousands of years, and it looks like they did this to Greece. And what did the Greeks do in order to redress this balance to a certain extent? Well, they planted a lot of pine trees. This is Pinus halpensis, that's known as the Aleppo pine, mostly. And let's just have a look at this. Aleppo pine and Pinus brutia, that's the Turkish pine, are drought tolerant and fast growing coniferous species native to the Mediterranean region. I don't know about how native they are. There would have been some, but obviously it's this fast growing that's an important factor, because when people wanted to bind the soil, they planted Aleppo pines, because Aleppo pines grow quickly and they're very drought resistant. But what happens when Aleppo pines are exposed to fire? Well, you see, it turns out that Aleppo pines are highly flammable. The resin is extremely combustible, and a lot of the tree itself is very combustible. When I was thinking of growing mushrooms in an old tree stump, that was in our garden, I remember reading that they said you can plant mushrooms, whatever mushroom it was I was thinking of at the time, in any sort of tree stump but any sort of pine tree, because the resin is so, disinfectant. It kills almost anything, including, parasites and things like that. They are commonly found in coastal zones, and because of their drought tolerance are well adapted to dry summer conditions. And so when they wanted to reforest areas, it may have been native to the area, but it's obviously been far more planted because it's easy to plant, it requires very little upkeep, and you could put it on dry areas that used to be lush, but that was thousands of years ago, or hundreds of years ago. Okay, before I carry on, I'll tell you I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I'm also on Twitter and Gab, where I let you know when I've uploaded a new video. All the links are in the description, as are links to donation sites, which you're welcome to use, but you can help me very much simply by clicking the like button, by sharing this video, and by subscribing, or if you're on YouTube especially, checking you still are actually subscribed. Yep, right, back to the Aleppo pine. They're fire resilient due to the high production of serotinous cones. I believe that what that means is that the cones are resistant to fire, and when there's been a burn, they release their seeds and then start again. It's not that the trees are fire resistant. These species have been widely planted between the 30s and 70s in Mediterranean areas for soil protection and windbreaks near the coast. And that's the bit. Between the 30s and the 70s means you have hundreds, maybe thousands of well-established Aleppo pine and Turkish pine forests, and they are all fire hazards, every single one of them. But they required very little upkeep, you see. You just plant them and they just grow. Unfortunately, they just burn as well. And so you get this sort of thing happening. Here. You get this sort of thing happening and this sort of thing happening because of all these pine forests. Is this to do with climate change? Well, yeah, tangentially. We might be warming up. We might be. We probably are, but, you know, as I say. And I was about to say I'm not a climate scientist, so I don't know. But how much do you believe climate scientists now? There are many people who call themselves climate scientists who are just climate liars, aren't they? All right, so, well, that's the story. That's what's going on. It might be warming up, but just because it's warming up doesn't mean that we have that much to do with it. But it does mean we have laid ourselves a trap by planting Aleppo pines and Turkish pines. And so what do? We start planting other sorts of trees that require a bit more care, but don't burn so easily. That's the answer. And flapping about singing songs, wearing silly t-shirts, and walking around oil fountains is not the answer. That we have not tried. Yeah, you try, mate. You go out to Greece and start planting proper plants. You go to the Orkneys and start helping people bring seeds for seagrass into the Firth of Forth and anywhere else around the British coast. That's how you deal with climate change. Not this damn silly stuff. Dress up and, you know, and join a choir. Make yourself feel great. That we have not tried. No, the only thing you're trying there is my patience. Okay, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.